Hello to all of you future RCICs and RISIAs. So today I wanted to talk about the big picture. Now, this relates to the foundational aspects of Canada's immigration system. You do need to know this, of course, for your upcoming ICCRC exam, but a lot of times we get caught in all these little details of all of these immigration programs, and it's important for us to take a step back, look at the big picture. So that's what we'll do in this lesson. So in this lesson, we'll talk about the targets that the Canadian government has for immigration. You can see right on the bottom here, I've got onwards and upwards. Now, why do we have this? Well, because that is a perfect descriptor, really, of Canada's immigration system. It's also a perfect descriptor of you and your future business, and of course, the future clients that you're going to help once you are an RCIC. So when thinking of your future as an immigration consultant, well, part of it, of course, is passing the ICCRC exam. With this particular topic of foundational knowledge, we do talk about this in the seminar, so I won't really get into it too much here. But in terms of your business, I mean, you should be pretty happy that the Canadian government is so friendly and welcoming with immigrants when a lot of countries now have decided to stall immigration. And you'll see, I mean, you're going to be really busy helping Canada become amazing, more amazing, I guess. And part of this, of course, is you are going to represent future Canadians. So for business, it's great. For your ICCRC exam, it can be a little bit difficult, but that is something we talk about later on. So let's get into the numbers here. So we've got the statistics of Canada's population and future population growth. So obviously everything now is a little bit confusing, I think, because of COVID and the closing of borders and that type of thing. But these are the numbers that StatsCan has released. So we've got our usual 38 million Canadians, and that number keeps going up every single year. How are that many Canadians having babies? Yeah, a lot of Canadians are having babies, of course, maybe even some of you, but really it's through immigration. So here are the targets for Canada's immigration system. Now, if you remember from years ago, or a couple of years ago, when Canada said, hey, we're accepting 1 million immigrants over the next 3 years. Now, I was working in the business already, and it was worldwide front page news in a lot of places, right? And then when Canada released their targets for 2021, 22, 23, well, guess what? That number has gone up even more. So pretty incredible by the Canadian government. I think it really shows just how open Canadians are to immigration, how much the country loves immigrants, needs immigrants. And of course, again, you're going to do part of that very important work. So when we think of this as a percentage of the national population, well, the numbers are usually the same. It's pretty much always at about 1% of the Canadian population. So the Canadian population was, 38 million, give or take, I guess, over every year. And Canada's immigration targets usually reflect a percentage of about 1%. And that looks exactly like what's going to happen for our future immigration targets as well. So when we break this down, well, what does the government consider to be, I suppose, prioritized in terms of immigration? And you can see it's a very clear winner, and that is, of course, economic immigration. Now, why would economic immigration have, gigantic numbers, I guess more than the other categories combined, really? So why would the government do this? Part of it, I'm sure, relates to integration, Canada's economy, making sure that people who choose to come here to Canada qualify for programs, and of course can jump into working, can jump into getting that job that they want, and generally being happy and, of course, integrated in Canadian society. So when we think of this as a percentage of the total population by category, total, I guess, future immigration target population by category, yeah, we've got economic programs as the far and away clear winners here, right? At just about 60%. And that has been the case throughout quite a few years now, and still looking in the future. So we've got, of course, family at 25%. Now, this reflects, of course, what typically would happen in an immigration journey, where somebody would maybe qualify for, let's say, the Federal Skilled Worker Program, and they would receive that ITA and express entry, come to Canada, start living their Canadian life, start working, and that type of thing. Maybe later, they'll marry somebody and sponsor that person. Or maybe later on, they want to sponsor their parents. Well, that's what we're looking at when we're thinking of family reunification in immigration. Now, Canada, of course, is signatory to a lot of international agreements. So part of this is that Canada accepts refugees, protected persons. The cap on that, or I guess the targets on that really would be about 15% of Canada's total immigration targets. And of course, we've got H&C at about 6,000. So that's, sometimes people think that H&C is sort of like an automatic program to try to apply for their clients. You can see the acceptance rates are pretty low. Canada does not really accept too many people for permanent residency through that. And the numbers here, I think, reflect that. So when we dig more into those economic programs, well, we could see that, again, in prioritizing everything, express entry is the cornerstone, really, of immigration. If you have clients who are immigrating through express entry and they exceed the CRS cutoff score, amazing. I mean, you are really focusing on those areas where the government is being very aggressive in accepting people for permanent residency. And I think you've made a good choice in specializing in express entry, as long, of course, as those clients can exceed the CRS cutoff score. You've got some of those other programs here, startup visa, self-employed, more kind of entrepreneurial related programs. And think very carefully about those targets, right? So we do need to know this, of course, for the ICCRC exam, because theoretically you should know all of the programs. That could be a possibility for a client. But when you're thinking of those targets, they're not very high. So again, you might think of targeting a different type of program for your business later on. And of course, those provincial programs are up there as well, right? So localized immigration is, of course, the future. Immigration has been moving towards more localized, more specialized immigration for quite a few years now. And the data shows, of course, that, hey, if you've got somebody who's ready to move to Sault Ste. Marie, and they have a job waiting for them, and they have done their research, and they think they'll love the town or city, amazing. So those are the types of people who, yeah, would really be successful in immigrating to the smaller communities, rather than everybody trying to go to Toronto. So you can see PMPs are really, really up there as well. I mean, they're pretty close even to the amount of people who are being targeted really through express entry. When you look at some of those other programs, caregivers, home run. Caregivers is going to move up and up and up as the years progress, because as we've seen with COVID, caregivers are angels and they do a great service for society. I think the immigration officials see this, and they have really prioritized caregivers because, I mean, the Canadians need this type of service, of course, and there's some incredible people who qualify for this program. You've got the RNIP. So the RNIP and the AIPP, well, I consider them to be pretty similar areas as well, where they're not specifically PNPs, but they're more sort of groups of PNPs, right? So, and again, you can see those numbers are pretty high up there as well. Now, Quebec is always exciting for immigration, and they change everything all the time, and their targets are always pretty high as well, and it can change. It changes quite a bit. But generally speaking, you're looking at between 35,000 and 50,000 per year. So when we think of this in our total, well, we've got just about 250,000 people per year becoming Canadian through economic programs. When you take a look at this, of course, we've got new projects coming up all of the time. It's always really exciting. So you can see over here, economic mobility pathways projects. We've got more Francophone immigration projects as well. And really, there were some big targets released the other day that we'll have in another video. And it's just an exciting time to be an RCIC and to become an RCIC like all of you. So when we look at family, well, you can see it's what you would expect, right? Spouses, children are, of course, prioritized. And this would reflect the market for the government, where a lot of people come, immigrate, and then maybe get married and want to sponsor a spouse. Or, of course, you have people who are permanent residents, citizens, and hey, they marry somebody from Japan or Mexico and want to sponsor that spouse. Sometimes that spouse has a dependent child or dependent children, and that's perfectly fine as well. So you can see there's a lot of people who immigrate through this way. And I think Canada is really special with parents and grandparents in that you can sponsor your parents, your grandparents even, to become Canadian. So it's amazing. And it's always a really big event when they open the system for that, because it's thousands of people applying at the same time. And if you are one of the people who gets selected, hey, that's fantastic. Now for HNC, well, it can play a role, of course, in your ICCRC exam. When we look at the numbers of people who I guess, can immigrate through this program, this is what the government has set as their range of people they're willing to accept as HNC. And you can see it's pretty low. So again, when you think of HNC, it is a very, very, very special, often very, very last resort for some people who have been maybe rejected in other immigration programs, or they're inadmissible and overstayed a visa or something like that. So they are very, very, very specific situations. And of course, applying for a TRV or applying for under HNC, I mean, doesn't mean that the person will be accepted, right? So there are a lot that get rejected, and you can see only a few that get accepted. And you've got this big question over here where people say, hey, but immigration's down. How can the government reach these really aggressive targets now? And they have shown us actually recently how they're going to reach these targets. There's so many different ways. So we'll talk about a few of them here, but really don't be surprised if you are surprised every week with how aggressive the government is being in accepting new immigrants and in, of course, accepting enough people to hit these targets. So one way was the new pathway for PR. That is for 90,000 people. So that's incredible. We'll have another lesson on that, of course. But it is pretty aggressive. And I mean, that's about, assuming that they reach 90,000, that's about a quarter of their target already. So pretty incredible. As we talked about a little bit before, for caregivers, well, hey, Canada is really caring for their caregivers. We have an amazing CPD on this, by the way, and they are accelerating the process for these incredible angels because these people are just incredible. Yes, caregivers can play a role in your exam. If you are trying to think of an area to work with in immigration with your company in the future, caregivers is, quite an area to work with, and you'll be doing, I think, really good work. All right, we've got, just faster processing as well, right? So family class has improved so much over recent years anyways, and they keep improving. If you remember from before, from about, maybe it was 2 years ago, maybe even a little bit longer than that, but spousal sponsorship used to take years. People would be waiting for years to sponsor or to have their PR application for a husband or wife accepted. And now it is incredibly fast. I mean, it can be 6 months, it can be 4 months. So they've really improved this, and this is some good news because even the IRCC says, hey, we've improved, but we're going to keep improving. So pretty incredible news over there. Express entry is always the really exciting one. And you can see, I think, some historical events happening in express entry where in February, well, they accepted everybody in CEC. So if you qualified for CEC, if you were in the pool of candidates, the minimum points were 75. So people who qualified under that received ITAs, and there were more than 27,000 of them. So pretty incredible stuff over there. You've got the draw from April as well, which was pretty big as well. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they keep moving in this direction of being so aggressive in accepting new immigrants through, of course, not necessarily dropping standards, because really for CEC, I mean, people had to meet those qualifications anyways, but really just in increasing processing speed, in targeting certain programs, and really targeting, I mean, increasing their own speed in the processes of helping these people obtain their permanent residency as fast as possible. All right, so thank you for tuning in to this one. It wound up being about 20 minutes, so more than I expected. I thought it would be just 5 minutes, but it is such a fascinating area to cover in immigration. And for all of you, I mean, I hope you're pretty excited because this is the area that you're going to work in. And you can see it's a lot of people who the government is accepting. And even though, I mean, with those numbers I gave you, 400,000, 420,000, the number of people who want to become Canadian is pretty limitless. So for all of you, thank you for doing these extra steps in becoming RCICs. Your future clients will thank you. In terms of your exam, like I said, this topic would relate, of course, to your foundation of immigration knowledge, those broader pictures. And I hope you find this one refreshing as well. I found this lesson kind of refreshing to make because rather than looking at all these little tiny technical details, we're looking at the big picture, and we're seeing really some incredibly optimistic areas for us to work in. And I think just the work you're going to do for your clients, for yourselves, for your families, for your local communities, for our country as a whole is pretty incredible. So good work. Keep up the good work. I know it's tough. It's tough to become an RCIC, but you're going to see it's worth it, and really great work. I'm really looking forward to working with all of you in the future, and keep up the good studying.